Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday webinar with Joel and Bob. We'll just take a moment to let everybody filter in. I know it's going to be a minute because we've got a lot of people who are attending today, which is great. So it is a rainy Tuesday in Chicago. Joel, what's life like in your neck of the woods?
I took the dog potty earlier this morning. Kind of just damp and overcast, so standard Pacific Northwest.
Well, I know you guys have been drought ridden lately, so it's probably nice to see some water.
Well, I'm in all fairness, for the record, drought ridden in the Washington state just means that we only get like 60 inches a year instead of 120 inches.
That's true. How about you, Bob? How are you having a good morning?
Yeah, I am. I'm in North Carolina, and it was a little foggy this morning, a little chilly for us, but all in all, a nice day.
Well, this is a perfect day for talking about the growth wheel that I know both of you have had a lot of interest in and more experience, right? As the days go by, more and more experience with this. So quickly, I just wanted to welcome everybody. My name is Laura Caldy. I run sales and marketing for Applied Frameworks. And my job really is to just make sure that your questions get answered either in the webinar interspersed. We have a Q&A part at the end. And no question is a bad one to pose. So if the easiest for us is if you put them into the Q&A button, and I'll just be monitoring that as we go. It's recorded, so we'll be sharing the recording at the end of this. It usually takes us a day to do that. And I just want to say thank you so much to Bob and Joel for hosting this or for joining and talking about this great topic. So I will turn it over to both of you, but quickly, Joel is principal at Applied Frameworks, and Bob is the Agile Moose. And I will let both of you say a little bit more about yourself, and I'll leave it at that. So thank you so much, and take it away.
Thank you, Laura.
Bob, please. I think most of the people that have joined because you're here, so I don't know that you need all that much introduction, but you want to say a couple of words about yourself?
I'm Bob Galen. I've been doing Agile for a little while. I spend a lot of time doing Agile coaching. I've recently written a book within the last year called Extraordinarily Badass Agile Coaching, which is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. I'm almost spending too much time thinking about and talking about Agile coaching nowadays, so I need to almost take a break from it. But that's me, and you can reach me at Agile Moose.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Yeah. So. And then I am Joel Bancroft-Connors. I am known as the Gorilla Coach. I got a habit for talking to tough problems in the room that nobody wants to talk to. And I am a certified Scrum trainer and certified team coach. I work here at Applied Frameworks, and I have been working on the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel open source group for about 1.5 years now. And I'm really passionate about this topic as well. I am so thrilled that Bob was willing to come and talk, because the story of Bob and the story of the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel are kind of woven together in a lot of ways. And again, his book, he's underselling it. His book actually introduces the growth wheel, and a lot of the book is founded around using the concepts of the growth wheel as we move forward. And as you'll soon see here, there's a lot more about how Bob got involved in all of this. So let's start with the challenge. Why are we doing this? Why do we have this? If we look at this, Agile Coach, LinkedIn, about 91,000 results. Scrum Master, 2,800,000 results. Just in one quick looking for Agile certifications and everything, I found this CIO.com article with 16 Agile certifications available today. The irony is, none of the high-level certifications that Bob and I have are even listed here. They're only things like CSM level, CSP level, or the equivalent in other certifying bodies. So there's a very big challenge of what is an Agile coach? What does it mean to be an Agile coach? How do we know that somebody we're hiring as an Agile coach or a Scrum Master has the skills that they need to be successful? How do we know that we have the skills to be successful in this job? I mean, I am a recovering project manager. It's been over 12 years since I opened a Gantt chart. When I was moving into this, I mean, imposter syndrome. You could have looked up imposter syndrome on Wikipedia. I know nobody here other than Bob and I probably ever had an encyclopedia. You could look up imposter syndrome And you would have found my picture right there. And I'm writing a note for myself because I just remembered something super important. Full transparency. So maybe you're in a job where you're going, well, oh, this agile coaching sounds cool, but I don't know that I could do that. The interesting thing is there's a very good chance you actually have a lot of the skills you already need to be a good agile coach. So we're going to start with some history, and the advantage that we've got is because we've got Bob is I'm going to be able to ask Bob a little bit about some of the stuff behind the slides that I'm going to put up here. So we're going to start with recognizing that the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel stands on the shoulders of giants. The giants are, in particularly, Lisa Adkins. In 2010, Lisa wrote a book called Coaching Agile Teams, and it became the work that agile coaches wrote. Reality is actually even if you're a Scrum Master, you should get this book, because really what she's talking about when she talks about agile coaches is she's talking about a team level coach or a Scrum Master. This book just set the foundation. It's what got me going, made me believe that, yeah, I could do this. And we even have the concepts of the original growth wheel in her book. And you can see this where she has you're a facilitator, you're a teacher, you're a conflict negotiator, collaboration conductor. So she was already having this concept of there are a lot of different skills here. Now, Bob, what I want to ask you is, as I understand it, you actually attended the 1996 Uppsala conference where Scrum was actually unveiled to the public, right?
It was so Schwaber and Sutherland. Uppsala was a very techie, object-oriented, Unixy conference. So it was very geeky back in the day. I forget the last one, but it ran through the 80s and 90s and into early 2000s, I think. And I was attending one, and I just attended this session where those two, and it was a white paper, but they were talking about lessons learned. If I remember correctly, it was Eastville Corporation was the case study place where they were experimenting with Scrum. So I heard that and grabbed it, latched onto the white paper. I may even have it's public, I guess, still. And then I ran back. I was a director of an engineering team. I probably had an engineering organization, Joel, of maybe 80 folks that reported to me. So I was a mad scientist. So I ran back with these ideas of Scrum. And embarrassingly, I probably wasn't a good agile leader because I prescribed Scrum because I was so excited more than I asked permission for people to adopt Scrum. In hindsight, I was a little heavy-handed, but it worked beautifully, actually, and that was my start.
Right, and so Uppsala was in 1996. Lisa's book came out in 2010.
Yep.
What happened? I mean, we've talked about this before, but in that period, I mean, how did we understand what it was a Scrum Master, and was there even really a concept of an Agile coach in those first 14 years or so?
I don't think, I mean, my role at the time, I was a leader. I was a technology leader, and then I was an Agile enthusiast and an early adopter. So I was playing with that stuff, and I was coaching. In hindsight, I was putting on a coaching hat back then, and whatever stances I was using. I was probably not using professional coaching very well, but I was teaching and mentoring and advising and things like that. But there wasn't a lot of hoopla around, you are an Agile coach versus what you explained on LinkedIn. So there wasn't 91,000 back then. No one was talking about it as a role definition. People were taking the action. I do think it was that. Now, if you remember, XP was playing against Scrum back then. Mm-hmm. So very often the coaching had if you were coaching, in the early days of Agile, it had a technical flavor to it as well. You couldn't really tease apart, what I would call like people coaching from technology coaching. Maybe that's part of why it didn't have a job description back then or something.
Yeah, that's a good point, and kind of nicely segues us into this next part, because of that whole even as Agile coaching came about, it was still very much tied into Scrum, and at that time, Scrum was integral to technology. You didn't think of Scrum being used in anything other than technology. So the evolution from that is Lisa then partnered with Michael Spade, another brilliant thought leader, has written some work. And if you ever get a chance to hear him speak, you should. She's just as knowledgeable and has contributed just as much as Lisa has to this whole movement. They created the Agile Coaching Institute, and they created the Agile Coaching Competency Framework, which we see here on the slide. Also known, a lot of people called it the X-Wing model. And this came out in, I think, late 2010. And really, it set the ground rules. It set the structure for Agile coaching for the next decade. Now, as I understand it, this came about afterwards, but Lisa had been working on this for quite a few years. In fact, you actually you encountered Lisa before Lisa was Lisa, correct?
So a real short story. I mean, I was teaching around 2007 to 2009. I was teaching some around the country, these Agile project management classes. It was very early trying to take Agile out to business analysts and requirements. And I was doing with Ken Pugh, if you know Ken Pugh. So we were doing that. And I stopped in Richmond. I think it was Richmond. And Lisa was still might live in that area. And this was before she became a CST. She was looking to become a trainer, and she attended my class. She was trying to get credits to observe classes and things like that. She sat in. I think this was pre-X-Wing, pre-coaching book, pre-trainer. Yeah, so I met her very early on in her career. And then I watched her accelerate, which has happened to me many times. As an old dinosaur, I meet these people and then they accelerate way beyond me. And I'm like, wow, what they're like jet engines. So Lisa was one of those, and Michael as well. They both are sort of, co-leads to what I would call the awareness of the Agile coaching movement, what it means to be an Agile coach, etc. They really set the stage.
Awesome. Hey, Laura, it sounds like we're having some technical issues. Is there anything we can do?
Oh, I just wanted you to stop sharing the slides for a second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so apparently Bob's face and your face when you're talking don't appear to the audience. And so I just wanted to see if you stop sharing and reshare it, if that would fix the problem.
Okay. And yeah, I actually got a text from somebody who said they were, that he got booted and is trying again to join. So he's having trouble actually joining. All right, I'm going to share the screen again, and maybe what we'll do is we'll stop sharing. If we continue to have problems, we'll stop sharing.
Yeah, stop sharing.
Yeah. All right, so we'll go back to sharing. So,
and there may be some people who don't want to see my face, so that's okay as well. So
and it looks like for most people it's fine. So let's just keep going. Sorry to interrupt you.
No worries. Hey, that's expect and adapt. So if we look at the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel for a moment here, one of the things is we understand what a lot of us think of as stances, teaching, mentoring, professional coaching, facilitating. The interesting thing, as I talked to Lisa late last year, and she talked about the Agile coaching stance, these were 4 different skills in a coaching stance. She thought of it more as there is a stance and you can lean into different skills. And I think we kind of seen where that goes. But one of the things you'll notice here is technical mastery was still a very major part of this. I remember early in my Agile coaching career, not only am I a recovering project manager, I'm not an engineer. I didn't even stay on a Holiday Inn Express last night. I have no technical background beyond maybe a mean wicked spreadsheet. And I was told point blank by several people, you'll never be a good Agile coach because you don't have the technical knowledge. Well, it's 2022 now, and Scrum itself, even the Scrum Guide, has evolved beyond a focus on technology. And we've recognized that Agile and Scrum are now appearing in all parts of the world. So while this created this incredible foundation, it wasn't adapting. It also lacked a competency model. How do I know how good I am in this? Well, Lisa and Michael had this concept of Shu Ha Ri, which they brought from martial arts. That competency, that idea of Shu Ha Ri was never mapped to the competency framework. So you didn't have a way of going, well, great, I'm teaching. How good am I at teaching? And so we needed to start going, okay, great, where are we going to go from here? So today we have this stated goal now of how do we professionalize the world of Agile coaching? And this was this vision statement was crafted by Mark Summers, who is a certified Scrum trainer and certified enterprise coach out of Britain, who's brilliant, wonderful person. You should follow him as well. He has essentially been acting as the product owner for the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel initiative for the last year and a half. Let's talk about how we got here, and then we're going to go into the wheel and we're going to start talking a little bit more about all of this stuff. So in 2018, the Scrum Alliance holds these guide retreats for guide level certified coaches, so certified Scrum trainers, certified enterprise coaches, certified team coaches. They hold them once or twice a year to bring them together to really, where are we going to go, and start to really drive ideas for stuff. And at the 2018 Guides Retreat, Mark Summers and several other individuals got together to talk about this and came up with this idea of an evolution of the growth wheel, an evolution of Lisa and Michael's wheel. And we got an early version, which you can see the old version of it at whatisagilecoaching.org. It was really cool. It was really great. And unfortunately, basically didn't go anywhere. The people that were in the room started using it, but it didn't get any traction. It needed a certain amount of catalyst. That catalyst came along in 2020 when Bob here wrote an article called Agile Coaches Need More Than Coaching Skills. Now, I want to ask Bob about this a little bit, but before we do that, his article literally set off a veritable firestorm in the coaching community. Just in the Scrum Alliance, Guide community, there is a private email list with about 400 coaches on it. And for weeks, there was conversations based on what Bob wrote. And Bob was really arguing about this concept that you can't always just be in what is called, in the international terms, the coaching stance, the International Coaching Federation's coaching stance. You're always staying neutral. You always ask questions. You have no agenda. You're not providing any answers. You're only providing questions. And Bob was arguing that as an Agile coach, you can't do that. Bob, what brought you to, what was the straw that caused you to create this article?
I mean, the catalyst for me is always that I need energy I've written a few books, and the driver for me is to see a problem. Not that I'm going to solve it, but I want to expose it. So the problem I saw here, and I saw it in many cases, were coaches, Agile coaches, some of them certified, some of them fully trained, and they were coaching organizationally, Joel, and they were coaching leaders, and they were applying a pure, what is that tool? If the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So all of those coaches had professional coaching stance and questions, powerful questions. And I started seeing death by 1,000 questions, meaning they were using the same approach, the same stance, and they didn't either have permission or skill or knowledge to switch stances. And so I was seeing them fail. And they were personally failing. They were getting marginalized in the organization. They had marginal influence, or they would be asked to leave. And they weren't serving their clients, their leadership clients, organizationally as well, because the leaders were getting frustrated with that. So that I saw that over and over and over again. And if you remember the buzz that happened in the lists, and I almost think like 50% of the coaches came out and said, yes, that is a problem. Or some large percentage of folks said, I've seen that. Not only have I seen it, I've done it. Or I made that mistake 5 years ago. And I think it's, to me, it was raising the bar that we need to do better, that we need to bring different skills to bear in order to be effective, to meet our clients and to be effective.
The interesting thing you said, about 50% of the people, I remember conversations, and there was a healthy minority that were saying, well, no, you should never leave the coaching stance. And I found it interesting. I had only just become a certified team coach at that point, just a few months before. And for me, I thought it was frustrating also because the whole application process I went through, I was referred by an enterprise coach. So the application, I went through the faster application process, but the test was 45 minutes of me coaching somebody on the acceptance team and coaching stance. There wasn't anything about do I have all of the other skills? There wasn't any validation of the other things that are assumed there. And I know my colleague Carlton Nettleton had been on the CSP, Path CSP Educator platform, and had seen certified team coaches that were putting together coaching programs to coach advanced certifications who were lacking basic knowledge of Scrum. And it's like, well, how did this happen?
Right.
And one of the things I remember is, I don't know if it was in this blog or in something else, but you talked about the challenge of having a leader who basically yelled at you to stop asking questions.
Absolutely. I've had that happen to me many times. I'm sure other coaches have had that happen, not yell, but the point is, stop asking questions. I need you to help me. I need you to provide me some examples. I need you to provide me some advice. Not 100% of the time, but don't. I'm leading an organization. Don't ask me questions as your default response in every situation, please. So absolutely, I've had that happen. The other thing is not the yelling. What that says to me is I shouldn't get to that. I should be sensing the environment and switching my stances, or switching my competencies, or sensing what my client needs, what is their agenda, and then adjusting my response. Depending, it might be teaching, it might be mentoring, it might be facilitating, it might be coaching, etc. And just being nimble in how we respond to our clients.
Yeah, and I mean, I've had that before as well. It's like, Joel, stop asking me questions. Tell me what to do. And I think that's an important part of being an Agile coach, is recognizing that a coach is also a subject matter expert, and that's sometimes what you need to be leaning into.
Well, let me real quickly make a point. One of the
Yeah.
things that caused the article, Joel, is I not only heard a lot of pain, but I heard people saying, that like folks had internalized the X-Wing model to the point where they said, you know what, I can't provide advice. That's not Agile coaching, right? It's not
Right.
legal for me to do that. It's irresponsible for me to do that. And so part of my response was, let's stop thinking that way, right? Even if it's not there, it's not on the X-Wing model. If your client needs that, we need to be able to extend to that. So it was really, the model itself was constraining how coaches were responding to their clients. And that's still true to this day. I see that.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things that I hope to at some point be able to ask Lisa more in depth about, because I recently reread her book. I actually listened to the audio version. She does it herself. So if you haven't read the book and you don't read nonfiction books well, there's an audio version of the book, which is awesome. In the book, she actually talks about advising. It didn't make it into the wheel, and into the X-Wing model. And at some point, I'd love to find out. But she talked about this concept of advising in the book, and that it was very important. So Bob's conversation led to the Scrum Alliance actually putting on a conference in April of 2021, and it was called the Agile Coaching Competencies Open Space. And it really brought a large part of the conversation was really bringing that conversation that had been going on in these communication threads for months into this live conversation. And they got contentious at points with some of the people that were responsible for the certified team coach and certified enterprise coach approval process, defending that no, it needs to be only a coaching only stance. Fortunately, we all came together and we talked, and we recognized that, okay, well, coaching is super important. Maybe it's not everything, and what do we do? And at that point, we were lucky enough that Mark Summers made time to come to a U.S. Central Time Zone open space and attended. And he went, well, we had this thing called the Coaching Growth Wheel that we came up with in 2018. And a lot of us went, yes, this is something we could work with. And that started the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel working group. And the whole stated intent was to professionalize the world of Agile coaching and to not ignore the X-Wing model, but to how do we grow on top of that? How do we take the next step beyond the X-Wing model? I can't remember, Bob, were you actually at the open space?
I can't remember either. So I was involved in some of the discussions, and I think I was partnering in that a little bit. Yes.
All right.
No jokes, Joel. Please just let it go.
That's fine. So the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel as of fall 2022. And small disclaimer: if you buy Bob's book, it is changed. We're agile. We are constantly changing. Bob was going, it's like, are you guys done yet? Are you guys done yet? Are you guys? He held the book for like almost a month, waiting for us to get to a version of the wheel that he could actually use. The idea here is it's a growth wheel, and it's what are the competencies that you need. And just like the X-Wing model never said that you need to be good in all of these areas, the growth wheel is also very similar to that. The very first part of this is this building around a core of self-mastery. And it's super important concept, because it's if you as a coach or as a leader or as a scrum master don't have your own sustainability, your own ability to grow, the ability to learn, emotional intelligence, you're not going to be successful. Well, this was a super important part for you. And I've seen it a lot in your own journey, in your own writing, of like the sustainable pace and everything. So can you talk a little bit about your passion around the self-mastery?
Absolutely. And I think it starts with, and it's still evolving as to what do we mean by self-mastery. So is it, some people define it as self-awareness only, and whatever, and maybe extended to emotional intelligence. I think I would include those things. I would think I include things like walking our talk. Are you principle orientation? I would look at things like continuous learner. And are you well-rounding yourself? And this is where the wheel, if you are a continuous learner, am I continuing to grow my skills in a well-rounded way, pun intended, as an Agile coach? And it's a wonderful model for that. And to me, the inspiration for that, or the energy for that, comes out of self-mastery. So to me, it was important, the hub. When I saw the folks come up with self-mastery, it resonated, it hit me in the face, and it said, this is important, because this came out of the working group in Europe. The second thing is, now we're adding depth and breadth to it. Like, what does it mean? So I love the way that's unfolding. But it's really an anchor for me for all of the other stances. Another way of saying it, everyone, is coach yourself before you coach other people, if that makes sense, if that resonates with everyone. So a lot of those 90, I would argue and guess, Joel, that of those 91,000 people on LinkedIn, a lot of them are coaching out. But I wonder, my question for them is, are you coaching in first? Are you growing you? Are you walking your talk, etc.? So that's where self-mastery comes from my point of view.
And I totally get it. I mean, I went a lot of my career, I think, coaching out. And I mean, a wonderful Jesse Fuel, who's one of the people that helped me along my path to getting to be a certified Scrum trainer, once gave me the most wonderful compliment insult ever. He said, "Joel, you got the curse of knowledge," because I had all of this knowledge, but whenever somebody would bring something up, it's like I would just like open the encyclopedia, and it's like, boom, I'm going to give you everything about that. And it's like I didn't have the self-awareness to listen and be in the moment and everything. And so for me, that's an area that continues to be a challenge, I think, for me. And also kind of goes to that, look, if you're going to be an Agile coach, who's your mentor? Who's your coach? And for a long time, I went, oh, I don't need that. And I mean, I don't even, right now, I kind of have a mentoring relationship with a certain being antlered person, but I don't spend enough time getting coached myself. And so I know that's one of my learning areas myself. So we have the self-mastery, and then you'll see some areas that you'll be familiar with from the X-Wing model. So, I mean, we have the Agile. No, sorry. Oh, there we go. Trying to use the annotation tool, and not. Okay. So you see Agile Lean Practitioner. Transforming was in the masteries. You also, of course, coaching and facilitating. You notice mentoring and teaching are both under what we call now guiding learning, because it's really recognizing that mentoring and teaching are kind of two halves of a very similar competency, and so we put them there. However, things that weren't there is leading and advising. Again, advising. It was in Lisa's book. It's come back into the wheel. If you really, if it's going to help you for right now, when you see advising, put in consulting. and honestly, that was an area that I had a problem with the wheel for a long time. It's like, I'm an Agile coach, but some of the time I need to be a consultant. And where is that part? One of the things you will notice that's missing is the technical mastery. Being a technologist is no longer something that is considered required to be a Scrum Master or an Agile coach. In fact, one of the best Scrum Masters I know today in the world spent 20 years as a social worker before she became a Scrum Master. And she's just this awesome, rock solid Scrum Master. She doesn't have any technical knowledge, and she doesn't need it because she understands people. And that's the most important thing about being a good Agile coach, is understanding people. That said, there is this concept of what Mark Summers likes to call the rubber of the wheel, and it's domain knowledge. It's recognizing that wherever you're applying your Agile coaching, you might have specific domain knowledge that you also need. And so that's where technical mastery or financial industry mastery or manufacturing processes masteries, those still matter, but they are things that you add on. You still need this core. You need the hub of self-mastery and these 8 competency areas to be successful. Any other, Bob, I know leading and advising are areas that you're super passionate about also. Any other thoughts you want to give on this?
Well, on the advising side, I just saw something on LinkedIn the other day. I'm still, responding and writing and reacting to coaching and trying to be a change agent in this space. And I saw someone equate advising or consulting to like operating in a big 5 consulting house or operating in a large scale. So, and there's processes and methods that come out of the consulting house. So when we say advising / consulting, it's not who you work for. Think of it as you're a sounding board or an advisor. So don't get caught up with any of those names. Now, coaches in those firms operate in a certain way, which is firm dependent, and then they have maybe generic skills. So the wheel is really reflecting that. So don't conflate those two. As far as leading, Joel, I was another sort of inspiration in that space, and not everyone resonates with it. And I don't know if it'll stick in the wheel. I hope it does. But for me, I've seen a lot of coaches in probably not team coaches, but more enterprise level coaches, and they're leaders, and the organization expects them to be a leader. Not all the time. You're not getting leader pay. You may not have a leader title, but you are leading by example. You are leading, you are co-creating mission and vision with leaders. You are helping with execution. You're leading. People are watching how you show up. They're watching how you behave. You're role modeling. Very often, there's that notion of leaders go first. I would say before leaders go first in an agile transformation, maybe the coaches go first, right? So it's coaches going first, and then the leaders go. Well, what is that? That's role modeling. That's leading by example. And I feel that it's worth a stance. It's worth a competency. Because it really matters, and we'll see. So I was very passionate about, coaches. We are providing advice, but also everything we do as a coach, we lead by example. So let's be very intentional in how we're doing that.
Yeah, I'm always reminded of the Stephen Covey thing where he talks about management and leading, and he talks about how you've got the workers and they're hacking a path through the jungle to create a road, and with their machetes and everything, and the managers are the people right behind the people saying, okay, you're gonna go take out that tree. The managers are also there with the water bottles and there to sharpen the machetes and everything and make it possible for the team to do that. But the leader is the person that's up in the tree yelling down, wrong jungle. And it's that sometimes you've got, part of role modeling is being willing to, it's how I got my nickname of the Gorilla Coach, is being willing to talk about those uncomfortable problems that are actually, look, why we keep saying this isn't working, but we've refused to actually restructure our teams into cross-functional teams, and we're saying Agile doesn't work. I think a great resource, and I should probably put it into the slides or something, is Ron Jeffries wrote this wonderful blog article years ago called "We Tried Baseball and It Didn't Work." And it's this concept of you can't change all the rules and then say, well, it didn't work. because then it's not what you're actually doing. One of the other things, I actually use this, and I teach this in my certified Scrum Master classes now. And of course, you can see these new Scrum Masters, their eyes getting big when they look at this and go, wow, this is a lot. I want to stress, you don't have to be an expert in all of this to even start. And also, this isn't just for Agile coaches. This is for Scrum Masters. This is for leaders. This is for anyone who wants to make a difference in helping teams to be more predictable and productive using Agile practices. If we just take an example of the Scrum Master and what a Scrum Master does, let me see if this works. First is, I would say you would just basically, you would replace Agile Lean Practitioner with Scrum Practitioner. So you'd have a focus here on Scrum. And then as a starting Scrum Master, the competency you want to lean into the most is facilitation. That is the first thing as a good Scrum Master you do, is you create the space and environment for your team to be successful. And then just with a little bit of leaning into the teaching, because you have to be able to help people when you go, okay, let's do the daily Scrum. You've got to be able to teach them in a way that they're going to hear you on how to do a daily Scrum effectively, as opposed to just reading a book. So that's an example of just, if you're a Scrum Master, now, of course, never forget self-mastery, but that's where you focus. Whereas if you're like an enterprise transformation coach, the places that Bob leans into most probably, I think, is these three areas of the places Bob leans in the most, with a little bit of serving the business and a little bit of coaching, are the areas that Bob really focuses on now. I mean, you don't do a lot of facilitation or teaching except when you do your Cal classes anymore, right?
True. I mean, and some of it, part of the wheel is also deciding that, how do you want to develop your skills? What does your client need? And then where do you have passion as well?
Right.
So facilitation, I joke and I don't joke that I can facilitate. I just don't enjoy facilitation. I enjoy coaching leaders much more for an insane set of reasons than I do facilitating. And so I'm growing myself there. I have moderate skills in facilitation that I feel good about. Where I've been developing myself, Joel, is on the coaching side of things. And you're right, I leaned into transformation leading and advising. I'm relatively strong there. I can't get lazy. I need to keep developing it, but I'm trying to strengthen my coaching, and the complement to those stances is where I'm at now in my evolution.
Yeah, and I was doing a podcast just yesterday, an interview, and one of the people interviewing me had a reflection of, one of the things also is you could use this because then you can put together a team. And it's like, you don't want a team of coaches for an enterprise that are all just rock star facilitators. You want somebody who's good at facilitation, somebody who knows organizational design, somebody who knows teaching. This allows you to start to put together, do we have the right team of skills? So we've talked about,
real quickly, all joking aside, this notion of well-roundedness, everyone, the wheel, one of the things I love about the metaphor is the roundness of it, or the wheel nature. So become a well-rounded coach. And that doesn't mean that you're equal in all areas. We're building a coaching team. Well, let's think about, what does a well-rounded coaching team look like? What does a well-rounded enterprise level response across look like? So it sort of surfaces that notion of, we're complementary skills and we're growing where we need to be.
So we've talked about how we've expanded the X-Wing model and provided a better idea here. And what I want to now do is talk about, okay, well, what about that competency? How do we measure that competency? And this is an area that we spent time on, and we actually leaned on some industry standard practices here. And we brought in the concept of the Dreyfus model of skill acquisition. So this is a model for how learners acquire skills through formal instruction and practice. And really what it was, the Dreyfus brothers did this study back in the 70s or 80s. And it was really challenging that whole 10,000 hours to be an expert. And what they really were arguing was, well, yes, it takes 10,000, it might take 10,000 hours to be an expert. However, there are skill progressions through that. And the idea is, if we look on the left, we can see what we've kind of defined as high level for the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel of beginner is textbook knowledge with no practical experience. It's like, okay, I took a class, I watched a video, I read a book, I haven't actually gotten to use it. Whereas advanced beginner is like, I've got some practical experience and application of the competencies. A practitioner is really, you're well-rounded. You've got a lot of experience in it. You can start to put together and maybe start to treat it more like Lego blocks and take a few Lego blocks and put them together to create something And then when you get into the guide level, that's where you're really starting to make your own Lego bricks, and you're starting to experiment or working with Lego bricks and glass blowing at the same time. And then we get to Catalyst, and Catalyst is where we have people that are really constantly pushing the envelope, constantly driving more, leading more, causing us to think, causing us to go, huh? And people in that area, I mean, I'll be honest, I consider Bob a catalyst. Lisa Adkins is a catalyst. Take it outside of Agile. Simon Sinek is a great example of a catalyst in leading space. You want to learn more about leadership? Go read Simon Sinek's book, Leaders Eat Last, to learn a lot about that leadership mindset. What we've done this is an example from the actual PDF for the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel, which you'll get a link to in this deck, or you can go to agilecoachinggrowthwheel.org and you can download the PDF. This is an example from the Agile Lean practitioner, and so what we have is we have the let me grab my annotation again. So we have the competency area of Agile Lean practitioner, and then within the competency, there are two competencies within that competency area. There's the mindset, and then there's frameworks and practices. And frameworks and practices, this is really that, do I understand how to do the stuff? This is really that tactical information. And then each competency is broken down into a few skills. And I'm highlighting one, but there are 3 skills within frameworks and practices. The idea here is you can look at how you can start to see how to measure and move your progression forward. So a beginner in frameworks and framework methods just needs to describe an Agile approach and how it relates to the Agile Manifesto. Whereas when we move up to practitioner, you've demonstrated that you've moved a team to Agile ways of working. Here, just outline the historical development of Agile, as opposed to describe Agile development methods and explain their value. So the idea was to create a competency framework so you can actually start to move yourself through these competencies, as opposed to just going, oh yeah, are you 1 through 5? Let's actually give you tangible information that you can use for this growth. Bob, any thoughts about the introduction of competency model to the wheel?
It was another one of those areas that really excited me, Joel. It was obviously missing in the X-Wing, and it wasn't the intent, right? And we grew and we learned. But to me, I'm an Agile coach. What does that mean? What I want to dig into that is, okay, I'm an Agile coach and I'm about a practitioner level in facilitation. And I'm an advanced beginner here. And you don't even have to, you can broadcast that out if you want to, but it's really for personal improvement. Where are you? How are you developing yourself, right? And how are you growing? And I think our profession needs that. It needed some kind of guidance. The other thing I like about it, it's a soft-handed, I think. I don't know how you view it. It's trying not to be judgmental or negative. It's trying to be growth oriented. And I love that lineage into grow yourself. Don't judge yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, some of this is, okay, great. How do I use the wheel? I mean, several of the ways that we're seeing the wheel being used now is, obviously one is education. I teach it in my certified Scrum Master classes now and talk about, well, where can you focus? Another is in a coach or mentor relationship where you self-assess and then you ask your coach to self-assess. And by having these competencies, it's like, well, you said you were a practitioner in Agile, Agile frameworks. Okay, give me an example of when you lifted off a team into one of the Agile frameworks. And so you can actually have those conversations. Obviously, a self-assessment, an area that I've been passionate about and starting to think about using it is in actually interviewing. You can take these and turn them into behavioral interview questions. Look, I know that we need somebody who has at least a practitioner in teaching. Here are questions that I can ask to judge whether or not they are practitioner level in teaching. So those are some of the ideas of where you can use this. Obviously, you got to be careful and not use it as a weapon. It's not oh, well, you didn't do this. It is all focused on growing. That said, what I want to do now is make technology work for me. It's time for ABA. Ask Bob anything. Oh, okay, you can ask me questions too. So we've got time to ask questions. I do have a resource slide. We'll point you to several articles, to Bob's book, to how to find the growth wheel. All that information will be available, and we can drop the. And I don't know how we're making the slides available.
While people are thinking of questions, and please do put them into the Q&A, maybe you could talk a little bit about the aspects around technical mastery. So there was a question earlier on, which is the technical expertise as a software craftsperson. I think you were talking about the path of mastery, and there's maybe it's a reference that you're already giving, or it's something that you mentioned earlier on. Do you remember what you might have been talking about at that time? And while you think of that, other folks can pop some questions in Q&A.
Yeah, I think Bob can probably answer this, but the context is that you don't need to be a technical expert to be an Agile coach or a Scrum Master anymore. I mean, I am a failed art major. I never even graduated college. I don't have any technical knowledge, and yet I worked in Silicon Valley for 20 years as a project manager, then Scrum Master and Agile coach. And I've been very good at what I do because I focus on outcomes. I focus on conversations. And yeah, I may not be a technical expert, but I'm good enough with people now that I know when an engineer is not being honest, and I can ask the questions that will usually cause another engineer to dig deeper. Bob, on the other hand, has been an engineer. He has thrown down code. Any thoughts on where technical mastery has moved with the wheel?
Well, I don't think it's a movement. I think it was in the X-Wing model, and I think it's embedded in domain knowledge in the tire. But I also think if you look at Agile Lean Practitioner, it says frameworks and practices. I don't think those practices are just project management practices. I think there could be design practices. Not I think it should have, there's the ability to do design and testing practices. So I think, you're an Agile coach, but then my domain skew is I might have specialization in technology practices. I mentioned Ken Pugh earlier. I think of Ken Pugh, and I don't think he's mapped himself to the wheel, so I should try to talk to him about that. But he's a technical coach, and he maps in there, and it's in the domain strength, and it's also in the Agile Lean Practitioner strength. But I don't think I think he fits that notion of technical coaching. Let's get out of technology. Let's talk about business domain, Joel, right? So value stream mapping, I think organizational development, sort of valuation, prioritization, the business domain, I think a coach can specialize in that area, and that would map in that same thing. It mapped in X-Wing, and I think it maps in the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel.
Yeah.
Now what you're saying is let's not get skewed. Like you can't be a coach if you don't have technical chops. No, you can be an incredible coach, but you probably can't guide technology teams in how to write unit tests. Okay, well then someone else can come in and do that.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to just scan through the questions that are popping up in the Q&A and pick the next one that you want to chat about, or do you want me to pose one to you?
If you can pose, I was actually trying to put together the link so I could drop them in chat.
All right. So here's one. How do you think somebody might use the growth wheel to help career growth from somebody who's maybe a junior Scrum Master to has maybe a aspirational career goal of becoming an Agile coach? In what way can the wheel help in that endeavor?
So go ahead, Joel.
No.
I was going to say assessment, and I'm seeing Saif Ahmed said something about an assessment. So to me, when I do some pro bono coaching and coaching of individuals, and one of the first things I do nowadays is I ask them to do a self-assessment and use the wheel as a backdrop for that. Almost independent if you're a technical coach or a business, whatever you're calling yourself. That's just where are you? And then we review that, and then we talk about, well, where do you want to be from a career perspective? And look at strengths and weaknesses in the wheel. I'll just say weaknesses, don't get triggered by that, but strengths and weaknesses in the wheel. And then how does that support what kind of a coach you want to be? Joel did a really neat job earlier, everyone. He talked about the Scrum Master, remember that? And he circled some areas of the wheel in red. And he talked about, hey, if you're a Scrum Master, so now pretend that you did that baseline assessment, and then you sat down with Joel and he talked about, facilitation. So facilitation is a weak area And for a Scrum Master, you want to really strengthen that. So that would identify that. And then we can reassess. So you can assess as a baseline. You can put together a growth plan. And I would recommend this is the start of your coaching journey. And you can do this even if you're a heavyweight coach. Even if you're big-headed about it like me, I still think it's good to assess where you are. Look at where you need to be in your career. Where do you want to be in your career? Where do your clients need you to be? And then do a gap analysis and then put together a learning plan for yourself.
And while I would caution to be very careful with it, because you don't want to weaponize it. I had an early version of something I was thinking about along the lines of a growth wheel. It was much more complicated that I worked with a client on, and we actually were working with the HR organization to put it in place. This was both for Scrum Masters and product owners, and it was to create a career progression from basically Scrum Master 1 and Product Owner 1 to Scrum Master 4 and Product Owner 4. And so you can potentially put it in there. It's as a growth path. One thing the wheel doesn't do right now is it's not going to actually say, okay, great, you want to go from advanced beginner to practitioner, here's what you need to do. We don't provide a specifics on that. That is a place where we're looking to grow, and even at some point probably mapping the various major certification bodies out there. Where do their certifications potentially get you in these competencies? Not a guarantee, but like if I take certified Scrum professional, Scrum Master, what competency level in facilitation could I potentially get by doing that? And so that'll continue to help there. Until then, though, really it's just look at where, as Bob said, use it to guide where you want to go. You've got a goal, and then brainstorm with the people around you on how can you get to that goal.
So I think that kind of halfway answers one of the other questions in here, which is how would you use that wheel as an assessment? And I can certainly imagine in a small team, just hauling it out and sitting around a table or in a Zoom meeting and, plot yourself 1 to 5 and have discussions about it in each one of these dimensions of the wheel, or plot the team, as you were talking about, Bob. What's the cross-functional strength of that particular coaching team? I don't know if you have any thoughts around that you want to add to it about how a team might be able to use that to kind of figure out how do we want to improve.
I would say first, I don't know if we've said it clearly, there's an assessment tool on the Scrum Alliance site. So there's a spreadsheet and there's the competency level assessment tool. I think it's very simplistic, but there is a tool available where you can self-assess. And so I would recommend, you can break the wheel out, but just go to that assessment tool. There's another tool available, not on the Scrum Alliance site. There's a tool called Comparative Agility. And Mark Summers and I, as part of developing the book, we actually wrote an assessment framework for Agile coaching as a subset of an assessment underneath the Comparative Agility umbrella there. And it's a little more elegant. It has the notion of a learning dashboard that you can create. And it has the notion, we put a lot of investment in resources to grow yourself, like what are learning objectives and things like that in books and articles and videos that you can read to sort of grow yourself in each competency area. So I'll drop a link to that. I'm not selling it, it's free. So, but I think there's the Scrum Alliance. So how do we do assessments? Either go to the Scrum Alliance or go to Comparative Agility and get some assistance in how do you do that.
So I want to, Laura, I believe we'll answer all of these questions, even if we don't get to them. We'll parse them. There are a couple out here. One that comes up a lot, actually, and this is actually currently a deep, passionate debate in the Growth Wheel group, is how is advising different from mentoring, Bob?
So, I mean, you can couple anything. I'm getting a lot of, the working groups are not pushback, but they're asking clarifying questions. So I look at mentoring as being more side to side. I am showing you what to do. I am going forward first. So there's different, I'm just defining my view of what a mentor is. It's shoulder to shoulder. I think of it as apprenticeship. Right, I'm a master carpenter, you're an apprentice carpenter. I will show you how to cut the appropriate joints. I will show you how to refinish the wood. I will show you how to have very clean joints and very tight structures. And then over time, you will learn that. So we're working collaboratively. I'm sort of a leaning. I'm taking you under my wing. I'm sharing my secrets with you. I'm mentoring you. I'm growing you. I think advising can be that, but it's also telling you what not to do. It's sharing options. It's things like, I've been in your situation and I've tried 3 different things. And this one worked miserably and I got fired from the job. And I tried this and we had modicum success. And this one was 90 out of 100 times this worked beautifully in a lot of different contexts. What I'm doing is providing options. I'm providing some constraints around it. I'm still leaving it up to the client to decide, but I'm giving them a lot of opinion. I may even be co-creating things with them. For example, in mentoring, I would probably not do a lot of, we're not going to work on this project together. Whereas in advising, I might work on it with you. I might advise your slides. I might review your slide deck before you do an all hands meeting and things like that. And really I might add a few slides and say, no, you missed this. You missed this and you missed this. And you need to focus on the people. Stop focusing on the business dynamics. You need to introduce, and what's your why? Maybe I need to help you with a why. So I think there's a boldness in advising, a courageousness that's not inherent in mentoring. I think of mentoring as being potentially softer than advising, but there's similarities.
I would agree. I kind of sum it up as I kind of think of active versus passive. Mentoring, you have no agenda. Like I can give somebody advice as a mentor. If they don't follow it, no judgment. If you hire me as a consultant, as an advisor, and I give you advice and you don't do it, I'm going to call you on it and say, look, you wanted to know how to structure your teams. I told you. And I think part of it is, as an advisor, you've got to be willing to walk away if the client isn't listening. Whereas a mentor, I mean, that's like being a big brother. The person you're mentoring, they screw up and it's like, okay, great. Let's pick you up and move you on.
I have an article I'm writing now, and one of the little paragraphs I'm emphasizing, Joel, is I said skin in the game. So I think mentoring, I don't have skin in the game. I have intent. I think in consulting, we have skin in the game. And I think that's one of the reasons why folks are so frightened by consulting, because there's risk, because we're on the hook for our advice. And we need to be skilled in giving it and navigating the risk, but still giving it.
Yeah, I agree completely.
So we're getting close to the end of our time, but I'm wondering if Bob, if you have some thoughts around what the future of Agile coaching might look like, and how can the community help support the future we all would like to see? Like, what are some of the things we can be doing in order to improve the role, the profession, and the future of that particular role?
Great question. I'd say the first thing is, everyone who's listening who is in a coaching role, work on self-mastery. So look inside before you look outside. And you can get some guidance on the web around the coaching wheel, because it's an inside-out job, and a lot of people don't get that. And I think it affects it impacts the effectiveness of your coaching, and it impacts the effectiveness of how we're serving our clients. And I mean clients in the general case, like teams versus leaders, individuals, and groups. So self-mastery is important. The second thing I would say is, one of the things that really I get passionate about is the wheel, is look at yourself, do an assessment, and then have the intention over time of well-rounding yourself, given your context, given what kind of coach you need to be. So work on so the self-mastery will drive that. So my hope is, Laura, that the world gets, right now we have a lot of, I would still say we have a lot of imbalanced coaches. Remember that silly metaphor, right? If the only tool you have is the hammer, right? We're hammering everything's a nail. So we need to become more adept in our tools, in our competencies to serve our clients. That's the point. It's not about our competencies. It's about, what do our clients need? And I think they need more stances from us, and then continue to grow that. I also hope that the wheel continues to evolve, not maybe as quickly so I can catch the book up to it. But I also hope that right now there's this debate in the community. I'm going to say it's 50-50, but it's sided that says, oh, we don't need any additional stances. We don't need leadership and we don't need advising. I really hope leading and advising win or evolve in some way, because I really think as a profession, we need those competencies. Maybe we change the names of them so someone isn't triggered by it. But I really think they're good ads, and I hope they don't go away, so that we continue that well-roundedness.
Yeah, well, I think that's the key here, is in service of your organization, in service of the people who work there, and service of kind of the future that people are co-creating. Building those competencies, looking inward first, is really what I think you both have been really impressing upon, at least me as also a sort of an audience member here. That's my big takeaway. So I appreciate that. And I think, as far as I can tell, everyone here has appreciated the conversation as well. We're at time. If anyone else has follow-on questions that you didn't get answered, there's still a minute or two to stick them in Q&A, because what we do after this is we do gather around and have a discussion. And in our follow-up email, we provide some additional thoughts on things we might not have been able to talk about as deeply as we wanted to. And that'll come along with the recording link as well. So thank you so much for everyone to be here. Bob and Joel, thank you so much. Any last words that you want to leave the audience with before we wrap today?
Well, not the audience, but real quickly, Laura, I want to thank you and Joel and Applied Frameworks for inviting me. It's been a joy. So thank you for that opportunity.
Bob, thank you for making time. I really appreciate you coming and talking about your passion around this.
Cool.
All right. Well, I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of your Tuesday, and stay tuned for the follow-up. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.